Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Ocrolus Product Pulse. Today, we're excited to share our latest solution specific to mortgage lenders like you, Inspect. My name is Craig McKeon from the Ocrolus marketing team, and I'm joined today by Becca Seward, Director of Product for Mortgage. So today, we'll chat through the why behind Inspect, the solution itself, and a walkthrough of the product. Please use the Q&A module to input any questions you might have. We'll be happy to answer those throughout the presentation and at the end. So before we dive into the product itself, let's talk about why we built it, because it starts with the challenges we've consistently seen from loan processors, underwriters, and others like yourself during origination. We know that reviewing document data and identifying discrepancies between the 1003 and borrower-provided documents is a major pain point. And this is why. We've heard it's often an entirely manual process. Without automation, every borrower uploaded document has to be manually reviewed for accuracy, as well as consistency and its completeness. As you know, this is very tedious and it's very time-consuming work. Stare and compare fatigue is also real. Processors and underwriters spend hours reviewing dozens of documents across multiple screens. This can increase the risk of omissions or errors. There's also delayed cycle times that can slow down loans. Every time there's a discrepancy or missing information, additional documentation has to be requested from the borrower. This back and forth it can add days to the loan process, and it can also drive up origination costs. According to a recent report by Freddie, top performing companies are processing loans up to 63% faster than their counterparties. It creates a frustrating borrower experience, and it can also frustrate you as well. Multiple rounds of document requests throughout the loan lifecycle can have that frustration, and it can negatively impact the experience of your borrowers. These challenges are exactly why we've built Inspect. To streamline this process and eliminate those inefficiencies, we want to automate what we can automate with confidence. Becca, I'd love for you to give us an overview of the solution, and we can jump into a demo from there. Additionally, if you do have any questions, I want to remind you the Q&A function is available for you to submit those.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. So Inspect is part of Ocrolus's Analyze capabilities, and it leverages our extensive data capture functionality to help lenders identify and resolve discrepancies that exist between borrower-provided document data and the Encompass 1003 application data. So it is here to help identify three different types of discrepancies. The first is a general data field mismatch. So something that was entered into Encompass does not match as it was displayed on the document data. So this could be things like the borrower's asset ending balance. If it was entered lower in Encompass than it was on the actual asset document, we can help identify that discrepancy. The second type would be there is something on the document that was not disclosed or not showing on the Encompass 1003. This is to help lenders identify things like undisclosed REO or eventually undisclosed debts. And finally, the third type of discrepancy is that there is something in Encompass or the application form that is not supported by a document that Ocrolus processed. So for example, if there is an employer that was mentioned, we would expect to see a supporting document for that employer. This is to help lenders identify that initial needs list of required documents that would be required to submit to underwriting. So ultimately, we're really trying to help lenders provide a cleaner loan file to their underwriters and catch some of these discrepancies or issues earlier on in the loan funnel to help prevent things like delays in closing or errors that might lead to financial penalties once we're in the investment stage. So without further ado, I'd love to show off a demo of the product. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So you should be seeing a screen of the Encompass loan origination system. So most of the folks on this call today should probably be familiar already with the LOS of Encompass. And to access the Ocrolus Inspect UI, navigate to Services and click on Order Additional Services. Ocrolus should be listed as a provider. We'll go ahead and hit Submit. At this time, Ocrolus takes API credentials and passes it over to the Ocrolus dashboard, ensuring that lenders do not need to retain separate sets of credentials to access our platform. We take care of that for you through the API setup during the implementation of this product. I'll go ahead and navigate to the Inspect page. And once I land here, I can immediately see all of the insights that Ocrolus wants to bring my attention to. So Ocrolus has identified 6 key insights that we want to pull to your attention. And you can see the different sections of the 1003 that Inspect analyzes. So off the bat, I know that there are 6 insights to look into for 2 for borrower information mismatch. So if I click on this row, a pop-up should appear showing me the 2 different mismatches that Ocrolus found. So in this example, we noticed that the Encompass 1003 field value for the social security number for Jill Smith is ending in 2 zeros. But all of the documentation that Ocrolus received, or the variations that Ocrolus received, ends in 66. This is very not an uncommon use case where a borrower may transpose a digit or fat finger their social security number. So we are here to help validate the accuracy of that information as it was entered. If I click on the variation that was found, this 66 number, I can see that it was found across 14 different documents. And I can see in this drop-down list what those 14 documents were. Just like our analyze capabilities for income calculations, I can see the source document and where within the source document that data field was found. So I can see this 666 highlighted. I can choose to mark this as reviewed, and what that would do is queue this number up for importing back into Encompass. It'll now take me to the next borrower data mismatch, which is a field name mismatch. Ocrolus has John Smith found on one document and Jack Smith found across 9 other documents. While it's not very common for borrowers to have first name field mismatches, this is a very common use case for individuals who may have their maiden versus their married name across multiple documents. So if one of the borrowers got married and some of their older tax forms have their maiden name, but their new documents have their married name, we can certainly help identify those discrepancies. Now, in this case, we do try to use a field anchor that lets us know that these 2 individuals, while they appear different, are in fact the same individual. For borrower names, we use the social security number. So I can see here Jack Smith found on 9 different documents, and I can see John Smith. Now, the way that John Smith was anchored to Jack Smith is through a shared social security number. So again, this is to help handle that situation where there might be different variations across different documents, and we can help validate and update that field value in Encompass. So that is the field level mismatch discrepancy. The second type of discrepancy is we found something on the documents that was not disclosed in Encompass. So in this example, we found that there is an address affiliated to Jill Smith that is not on the 1003. And this is very common for borrowers who do not disclose real estate that they own, whether it's because they don't have an outstanding lien on it, or they didn't feel that they had to mention it because it's a rental property that they're not receiving income from. Whatever the case may be, it's not always nefarious, but it oftentimes is undisclosed. So in this example, we have the address, we can show the data point or the document and from where within the document it was found. And then the action to take here would be to either add this address to the VOR or VOM screen, meaning verification of residencies or verification of mortgages screen within Encompass, or you can choose to ignore it. You can also add a comment for later use so that you can reference back to this if, for example, you need to condition for a letter of explanation to explain what this address is. So that is the second type of discrepancy. And this is to help find things like undisclosed real estate. We do have plans to eventually add support for this for additional entities that we might be able to find, such as undisclosed debt or undisclosed assets. The list goes on and on. The final discrepancy type is when Ocrolus has identified that there is a piece of information on the Encompass 1003 that is not supported by an Ocrolus process document. So that is why it is best for lenders to send over as many different document types as possible to Ocrolus for us to process, so that we're not over-indexing on missing documents or missing needs list items. In this example, Jill Smith said that she works at Ocrolus, but we never received a pay stub, a W-2, a verification of employment form, or other such employment document that helped us verify that fact. So if I click on this, it will show no supporting document, and it will mention the missing document proof of employment is missing. So again, our recommendation for lenders is to leverage this at the top of the funnel when documents are first coming in and you want that initial review of the application data as it was submitted by the borrower. This is to help identify missing documents that might be needed to submit the loan application to underwriting. It is to help with quick data entry of data points that are on the documents but not within the 1003, and it's also to help with those initial discrepancies. Today, we are supporting all of the main pages or sections of the Encompass 1003. So we have borrower information in the form of full name, birth date, and social security number. Address information, so this would be all addresses affiliated with the borrowers. This would include mailing addresses, PO boxes. It would include current residencies, prior residencies, addresses identified on the Schedule E document for rental properties, any address essentially that is affiliated to the borrower, with the exception of the subject property. And I'll get to that in a moment. We have employment information. So this will look at the WVOEs, W-2s, tax forms, etc., and cross-reference that to the VOE section of Encompass. Asset data, which will look at the checking accounts, savings accounts, and the brokerage accounts that were submitted. For the discrepancy on the balance, we will be comparing the ending balance that is displayed in the VOD section of Encompass, where all assets are displayed, and we will be comparing that to the most recently updated bank statement. So in cases where you don't necessarily have a digital aggregator up front within the POS where you can instantly validate an ending balance, this is a good product to use when you want to look at and cross-check against the asset data on the actual physical bank statements. We have loan details. So while this is primarily used up front within processing and loan origination, it is also something we believe that would be extremely useful further down the funnel once you get into the approval stage and even prior to closing. Loan details like the purchase price, the loan amount, the interest rate, the loan term, it's extremely critical that all of these pieces of information are consistent across the critical documents. You want to ensure that your interest rate is consistent across the loan estimate, the closing disclosure, the mortgage note, the mortgage statement, etc. So this can certainly be used for those critical documents down funnel prior to closing to prevent any accidental delays in closing. And then finally, the subject property address. So we will be comparing the subject property details across all of the critical documents that I just mentioned, but also comparing those details across things like the purchase contract, the appraisal, etc. So in my prior experience, I have worked in the closing phase of the loan cycle where I was a closing coordinator. My job was to look at all of these details across those critical loan files prior to the actual closing table. So this can certainly help as both a pre-check to underwriting and then a post-check prior to closing to save on those expensive issues or errors. There is a reviewed section. So if at any point you feel like you may have accidentally revised something that you might want to go back to, or you just want to maybe later on in closing see a history of things that were addressed earlier on in the funnel, you have that audit trail listed here. So all of the details and items that have been reviewed in the past can be reviewed in this dropdown. You can also reset any of these at any time. So if, for example, I accidentally marked a social security number mismatch as resolved, I can click on the ellipses here and reset that. And not only will it display up here again, but it will also display in the borrower section again. So we mentioned these things both up in the table as well as in the table down below for easy access. Now, I mentioned that this data field has been queued up to import back to Encompass. So if I click on this import to Encompass field, it'll list all of the changes that I have marked as reviewed that I want to now import back into Encompass. So again, we aren't just taking the field value, recognizing the discrepancy, and immediately overriding the data that exists in Encompass. We are also giving you the second chance to review the data that will be imported, review the data that exists in the 1003 today, and what value we will be overriding that field with. So this is just to ensure that we aren't overriding any field value data that you do not want us to. You are still included in the loan file, in the loan flow, to make sure that Ocrolus isn't overriding anything inadvertently, especially if it's a data field that might impact closing. Some of the field values you will notice are not always going to be importable. For example, we did put a stop to making any adjustments from Ocrolus to critical fields such as the interest rate or the loan terms, for example, because those have significant impacts on pricing. And obviously, you don't want Ocrolus messing with the interest rate that might go out on a closing disclosure because that has significant financial consequences. But many of the field values that would normally just be handled via manual data entry can be adjusted through this screen. So instead of having an individual go through every single one of these critical documents and comparing it to the 1003 to validate not only the accuracy, but that all of the information is entered into the loan file that is needed to review, this handles that for you. So we'll do all the review across all of the financial documents that are submitted by the borrower, such as the W-2, the tax forms, etc., and the asset forms. And then later on, we'll review all of the critical disclosures and the closing documents to ensure consistency on the loan details and subject property address details as well. So we certainly are excited about this product. We have been working on it for some time now. The team actually had a fun bug bash in New York to test this and try to find the discrepancy rules that we wanted to put into place here. For example, we're not just going to show street versus ST. Street versus avenue is a much more valid discrepancy match, or apartment versus unit is not so critical, but the actual digit 102 versus 103 is. So we're getting smarter and smarter as we continue to receive beta feedback from our clients. And we're very excited about the future of this product because, as I mentioned, we plan to add much more discrepancy types to this as the future, as the roadmap rolls on. So please share your feedback with us about what things you would like to see from this product, what type of field values you would like us to check, if there are certain data points across certain documents that you want us to look at. I have a list that's rolling on in my head of what we would love to add, but of course, our roadmap is always most informed and best informed by our customers and our prospective clients. So that is the demo for today. Craig, I'll kick it off to you.
Yeah, definitely. And we do have a couple questions that we can address here. Again, if you have other questions, please put them in the chat or the Q&A module. The first one being, how does Ocrolus handle identifying who the main borrowers are?
Good question. So we actually have an edit borrower mapping tool that is listed here. So Ocrolus does its best attempt to match the persons that we've identified on the loan file and match them to quote unquote borrowers in the 1003. So, for example, if there are name mismatches, like I mentioned before, where there are different variations of a person's name across documents, we will try to aggregate those as best as we can and then anchor them to an existing Encompass borrower. Now, if there are names that are identified that do not appear to be related to a borrower, let's say, for example, there's a partner listed on a 1065 document that is not a borrower, but is a business partner for one of the borrowers, they would be listed off on the right-hand side here as an unmatched name. Then we would not be exposing any discrepancies that are pertaining to individuals that are not critical to the loan file. So you can control that here. You can review the discrepancy matching or the entity matching that we do here. And if any changes are made, it's a very simple drag and drop process of taking this and moving it to the side or dragging it into this if at any point Ocrolus got it wrong. Now, we will present this screen if there are certain confidence thresholds we do not meet. Every once in a while, you might see this pop up, but otherwise, it's just there as an FYI.
Looks great. I love how easy it is when we can do anything that's drag and drop, make your life easier.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Becca, for showing us Inspect. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day.